The text area is how you write large portions of text. So if you're asking someone to write you an essay, you're going to want to use the text area. A text area looks just like this. It's a text area. It also goes inside the form element, just like the input element that we learned about. And this one also takes a closing tag. It's not self-closing. And the reason for that is because you're actually putting something inside of it. Unlike the input element, this one does not take a value. Technically, this would be incorrect. If you wanted to add a value, you put the value in here. Now let's take a look at this page. You're going to notice a couple different things. First of all, it's very small. Not nearly enough room that you need to actually write something valuable in it. Secondly, you can resize it. That means if I wanted more lines in here, all I do is hit Shift Enter, add more lines. On most browsers, you can even just hit Enter and add more lines. If this is too small, it creates a scroll bar for you. Now, one thing you need to be very careful of is it is space sensitive. That means all this space in here that you see, this is a whole brand new line, plus all this additional space, plus the space at the end. I'll just refresh and show you here, and then I'll select all of this. This is the space at the beginning, this is the space at the end of the line, like you see here. Now to eliminate that, don't add any extra white space in there. So I remove the white space, hit refresh, and the value is in there. So we're going to want to make this bigger. So instead of adding a width, we call them columns. So for this one, we call it cols is the attribute. And how many columns do we want? Let's say 150. Now these columns are based on the width of the character inside of it. So each letter would be considered a column. 150 is not a pixel value. If it was 150 pixels, it would be probably about 1/5 to 1/4 the size of the current width of it right now. Now by default, your text area will have 2, maybe 3 rows depending on the browser. A row is how many different lines there are. So this is the second row. To change that, change the rows. If we wanted to add 10 rows, there we go, we have 10 rows. Now going back to the default value that you see here, what if you wanted on the third row some additional text? So you're just giving them a quick little template. Template below, hit enter, so now you're on the second row, hit enter, you're on the third row now. This will say third row. But the third row is in the middle-ish. I mean, it's not where it's supposed to be. If we wanted it right to the left, it had to be to the very left of the HTML page, which means this needs to be right over. Now we have no additional spacing, but that second row has some spacing. We might not want that either. Remember, it's very space sensitive, so if we get rid of that spacing, save it, refresh the page, there's nothing in there except a new line. Now a text area can also have a placeholder in more modern browsers. This one is just going to be called a sample placeholder. And a placeholder only shows up when there's no text in here. So if I select all this and delete it, there's a sample placeholder. Again, this does not work with all browsers, but most modern browsers accept the placeholder, especially in a text area. Of course, you can add the name attribute, ID, class, style, title, etc., etc. It goes on and on and on. All those global attributes that you're aware of right now are available in the text area as well. So your task for this video is to first create a text area, create a new document if you haven't done that first, then create the text area. Then I want you to change the column width, or how wide the text area is, to 100. Change the number of rows to 5. And then I want you to write your first name on the first row. Then I want you to write your last name on the third row. And you should get something that looks something along these lines. Now this is mainly a test in spacing, because the spacing is critical in this. And it also shows you that you can use multiple lines instead of just an individual line like what the input element lets you do. Then save and open your document. Verify your first name and last name are on different rows, as you saw in my example. And if everything worked out the way it worked out in this video, then you're all done.